This is something that they do every year. I invite experts to be part of this conference. This year we have 4 famous people. If you don't know them yet, I'm going to reiterate who they are. We have Lalit Bhamare, who is the editor-in-chief of Tea Time with Testers magazine. This is a huge, huge community that publishes papers on software testing. And the papers are from your peers. And it's really been one of the very popular, I think it's the most popular publication on software testing in the world. We have Angie Jones. She is the rock star. The rock star, can we say that? Yeah. Angie took our community by storm. By storm. I think she's one of the most popular people representing this community to the world. And several years ago, I noticed there is a need for outreach to other community, being an advocate in other community, in developers communities, in business analysts, in management community. So Angie she's a developer herself, and she's an inventor. So she speaks at developers conferences, and she brings this message about the quality, being a quality advocate. She's doing an amazing job. She has 25,000 followers on Twitter. So I have 2,000, by the way. So just for comparison, okay? Yeah, and everybody knows Angie, and she's the face of software testing community, how others see us. So that's Angie. Lisa Crispin is a legend. Lisa Crispin is a legend. She is the founder, I would say, of anything that we do, like any advanced testing that comes our way. She's on the forefront of all of that. So her books include XP testing, right? Agile testing. Agile testing condensed. There is a lot of, now she's in DevOps space, she's developing that, and whoever was fortunate enough to take her tutorials 2 days ago, know how much you can learn from Lisa. She's very involved in the community. Lisa is the friendliest person I met in our community, and when you're friends with her, she makes you a friend to everybody else. She's really supportive to everybody she meets. And if you want to kind of be more involved with the community, then Lisa is your friend as well. That she is. Jason Huggins is another legend. Jason Huggins, the creator of Selenium, the tool that everybody in this room probably uses, heard of, struggles with, loves. He's the one. And Jason is also, I think, one of these people who are doers. He sees the problem and he does something, and he is a maker. So as much as, he created this tool, and now he's doing something else, which he's going to be talking in his closing keynote with his son, Declan. And this is something which is called robotics. And robotics is kind of the future of where the testing is going in a way. It's not everything that we're going to be doing, but yesterday we had this interesting competition where people were thinking about robots which would test things for us. But Jason is already doing that. He's the one who is doing it. Today we will, this is a panel, meaning that I'm going to ask a few questions, and then I'm going to give the mics to you guys, and you can ask questions of our people in a panel. So my question number 1 is, as people who are kind of in the forefront, visionary in our community, what trends do you see?
So I guess you asked the emerging trend.
What emerging trends you see in our testing industry?
I wouldn't just call it the trend in testing industry, but I would say software industry from my experience. And this is the latest one in my experience, is the need for an entire team to know how to contribute to whole team quality and then use testing education as a tool to make it happen. I believe this is what I have been noticing, and organizations are trying to solve this challenge, and this is the biggest and hottest trend in my opinion in the current day.
I think I have one. I'm cool like that. All right. Yeah, I'm seeing again like overall software development where we're moving really fast. Like every year it just seems to be faster and faster. Lots of teams are, they have the need to deploy multiple times a day in some cases. And so with that, that really challenges the way that we've been doing testing. There's no longer like this whole testing phase or, waiting until the end of development to get started. We've seen that for a while, but it's really becoming prevalent now. And so it just means that as testers, we're still needed. It's just in different ways and in different spaces and much earlier in the cycle, like from the beginning, right? So the best testers that I'm seeing in modern day are the ones who can go into a design meeting, right? We've not written a lick of code yet, but they can go in and start poking holes in the design. Not just there to listen, but to also contribute. Put on your thinking cap, your tester's hat every day, from design, from planning, during development code reviews. Like we have to be involved pretty much every step of the way to really have that continuous testing. When we talk about continuous testing, which is the buzzword of the year, I would think, continuous testing, people automatically just think about automation and this running as part of like some CI/CD pipeline. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be also just regular testing, right? And that's being involved in continuously, in every phase, not just sitting there and listening and waiting for people to tell us what to do, but to contribute right away. Think of how powerful that is to go in a design meeting and say, this is not going to work because X, Y, and Z. Wow. Everybody starts looking at you. And I've seen the narrative change where people used to think of those same testers, those same people as, oh, they're just a tester. To now, oh, the tester can't come to the design meeting. Let's reschedule. We need them there, right? So that's what I'm seeing.
Cool. Should this work or no?
No.
Let's use this. No? All right. Hello. All right. So Angie touched on a bunch of stuff just now, but also this morning. I guess if there's like maybe, I could see like 3 trends maybe. One, I think if you look at different buzzwords that caught on, like Agile and XP, and then DevOps, lean startups, one of the things that I see in those things is where various walls between organizational boundaries came down. If anything, DevOps really was the developers invading the production data center, right? Or XP, developers were invading the testing space, things like that. So I think if anything, there's going to be this trend of if there ever is a communication barrier in some organizations or places, if you can see those walls, hopefully over time those walls come down somehow. But that's you can be the future you want to see in the world if you go find a wall and tear it down, right? So it's not so much the future will happen to us. It's like you can be the future. Go find a wall and tear it down. The other one is I think speed. I'll touch on it a little bit later. Don't want to ruin my talk so much later, but speed is always a feature. I've kind of am the implementer of this affliction on people, like make things go faster. But also I feel it myself, and I think if anything, sometimes we get caught up in arguments or discussions about manual versus automation, things like that. But often the underlying force that's there is businesses don't care really how things get done as long as it's done fast. So if you're literally the world's record holder in in going through a process, the business will probably be happy with that as long as you're faster than the robot, right? If the robot's faster, then they'll just go with that, right? So there's a certain level, and it's not even about robots versus humans. It's like, I'm not going to go to all the stories, but it's often I've been brought in because, hey, here's this process, and it was 3 days long, and they want it to be a third of that. And then once you get it down to a day, they want it to be an hour. So that's always the underlying driver for anything. If you can come in, tear down some walls, but then after you tear down the wall, make everything go faster, boom, you're headed for the C-suite. And then the third one, I think, is just testing is getting weird. We had it really good for a couple of decades there, where all you had to worry about was a video monitor and a keyboard and mouse, right? And Selenium kind of comes from that, where it's like KVM, keyboard, video, mouse. Like that's 2 inputs, 1 output, you're good, right? And now it's the keyboard and the mouse and the video, they're all going away. So now it's all these weird interactions between a thing in your pocket and the wall, right? Or the magic wall that opens a door, or the wall has a TV screen, and it's all just weird, right? So I'm lately been finding myself in those kind of conversations where we're like, we got a bunch of things, how do we get it to interact and test all that stuff? Or in payment systems, anything with like your phone and a Bluetooth device. Maybe the other kind of trends here, probably getting a little too long-winded here, but if besides keyboard, video, mouse, it was also data entry into some kind of database. That was kind of defining attribute of Windows applications and the web and even mobile apps where you're just doing data entry. Someone's keying things into a field and storing it in the cloud. But now like all these things are collecting their own data and putting it in different places. And so you're not necessarily testing human-like data entry. You're testing that this cloud of stuff is communicating properly. And it's just getting weird, especially when there's no user interfaces. So one of the things that I'm picking up, I'm not sure if this is generally a trend, but like things that I'm kind of having to add to my skill set. I just got a book on how to learn, on getting my ham radio license, right? It seems kind of weird, but if you look at our phones, we've got a GPS, telecom, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. You're walking around with 4 radios in your pocket. We're mostly focused on like user interfaces, things like that, but some of my conversations, for me to help my customer more, I actually need to learn more about the radio aspect of the things that we have in our pocket, not necessarily user interface. It's kind of weird. I did not think of myself as like going to get, being the typical middle-aged white guy is going to get in ham radio. But that's where I'm kind of finding myself getting pulled because testing is getting weird, if that's my punchline to that. It's like I actually have to care more about the radio stuff than just the user interface. Anyway. Thanks, my view of the world.
What do we have these if they don't work? Okay, so is that going to be our new motto? Keep testing weird, kind of like keep Austin weird. Is this really working? Yeah. I plus one on what they said and what Joel said in his talk. Another thing that I see that is something I've wanted to see a long time is more focus on business outcomes instead of being really entangled in what's our process, what should we do, what practice should we do. It's more of what are the success metrics for the business, how can we focus our testing to make sure those things happen, and how can we engage the business people up to the C-level in a quality narrative, make them understand quality is super important to their product and they may need to make a longer term investment in it than they think. There's a new book out called Leading Quality by Ronald Cummings-John and his co-author, whose name I've forgotten. And it's kind of about that of how do you get these conversations going with your business and getting everybody to feel like they own quality. It is part of business success, and we can't test everything. So what are the things we really need to focus on testing? So many other things it could be, but we need to educate managers. One of the motivations Janet and I had for writing our latest book, which is under 100 pages, is maybe managers will read it. So it's got to be the whole team has to include everybody in the business, not just the software delivery team and operations team and stuff.
Okay, and my next question is, with that changing landscape, what are the new skills that you think, or not maybe new skills, but important skills that testers need to have for today?
Well, I think this conference was all about all these things, and I agree with most of the things Joel explained, shared in his talk. But I think I would still go on and emphasize on interactional expertise, where I believe testers need to be able to explain the value of their work not just to explain how valuable they are, but to involve other people in helping them understand how testing is done so that they can start contributing and understand and develop the quality mindset needed. Testing skills are, of course, important, but for me in this era, the most important skill I would expect from a tester is to be able to onboard non-testers into quality activities and leverage his knowledge so that team benefits from that.
Yeah, that's true. We can't do it all by ourselves, especially not anymore at the pace that we're moving. So we need to be able to help coach other people on how do they contribute to quality, right? So this shouldn't just be our focus. It should be everyone's focus. And to do that, we have to also pick up skills to be able to speak other people's language. So people touched on this a little bit. Lisa talked about the business. We need to be able to understand what they're saying and speak to them in a way that they understand what we're saying. Same for developers. Like, this is probably controversial, but I do believe like testers should be code literate. Whether it'd be nice to know how to write code, but even if you can't then understand how to read it and things like that, so that you are able to like contribute to code reviews and when you find a bug, it's not like, something broke. It's like, no, this broke because XYZ, and here's how to fix it, right? Extra kudos if you can go in and like fix stuff too, small things, typos and things like that. Instead of opening yet another bug in the backlog, go in and fix it. And think about how valuable that is as we're trying to move so fast. Instead of contributing to the backlog, you're knocking things out.
All right. So it's kind of what skills, right? There's always technical skills. Those things always change. One of those things, I feel like it's more of a habit that I like to get into. And I actually just happened today at lunch while I was waiting in line with my son. But it's these little things of like paying attention to little details that we otherwise walk by all the time and never notice. So he asked a question about the walls. And then we had this conversation, is like, is that wallpaper or is it paint or something? And then we had this, and then you're diving into that. Again, we just walk by, we're just surrounded by all these walls, never thought to have a conversation about these walls. But I was thinking, like, how can I prove that it is wallpaper without actually taking the wallpaper off the wall? So I was pointing out, like, if you look at the corners, it's kind of a rounded corner. And if that was paper, that's the way paper would fold around a corner, versus if it was painted, it would be a really hard corner. Or sometimes you can look at the edges. And again, this isn't a construction, you're not in the wrong conference. This isn't a construction conference. But there's other things that I like to do. Every time I walk down the streets, I notice the name on the grate, the grates around the trees, or the manhole cover. What's the politically correct phrase for manhole cover? Person hole cover. So I noticed this a couple years ago because I had a family member who worked at Neenah Foundry in Wisconsin, where they make like world's half manhole covers or something like that. Never thought to notice this, but now anytime I walk by a manhole cover or like a grate covers little tree on the sidewalk, I look down and like there's like two companies. It's Neenah or some other company. And 99% of the world, where's my point with all of this, is no one pays attention to these things. But to be really good at your job in testing is you have to pay attention to things that otherwise people just blow right past, right? So what you kind of want is, if you're kind of, again, this is like a habit you can do in anything, looking at the wallpaper or the sidewalk, right? But if you do this all the time, then when you get to some kind of thing in your job, you'll notice something that everyone else skipped, right? And that, I feel like, is cross-cutting, and it's going to be true forever, regardless of any particular technical thing. But if you have that kind of mindset of looking for things, people hopefully will ask you on a frequent basis, how did you notice that? How did you see that? What happens? Like, well, I'm paid to notice things that other people don't. Anyway.
Thank you. I'm going to start looking at grades.
Yes.
Interesting. There's so many things, and these are not new skills, but I want to say they served me well, but I see more and more people sort of waking up to them and seeing more conference sessions devoted to them. But influencing, we know that as humans, we don't respond to logic and facts. You can't persuade people with that. So I have been influenced a lot. I have been influenced by Linda Rising's work on that, on the science of influencing people. I encourage you to look for her talks on YouTube. And also from Linda Rising, something that served my teams well. And as a change agent, an influencer, I get my team to try this, is trying small, frugal experiments. If you have something, you learn something at the conference, you want your team to try, it's really hard to get people to stop and try something new. But say, hey, can I take 30 minutes of your time to show you how this works? And then if you like it, could we try doing it for a week or 2 weeks? And have some measurable goal around it. We think this will make our cycle time 10% shorter in a month, or that we think that this will cut down on our production bugs by 20%, whatever it is. Small experiments that you measure so that you know if you're making progress. And if you don't make progress, you still learn something and you can start over with something else or tweak your experiment. I think that's the way teams get better and move towards being high-performing teams.
So I'm sitting here and I'm just amazed. And I do run conferences, but this panel there is so much diverse knowledge and expertise here. It's amazing. So my next question is, because all of you very known people in our community, you obviously have a lot of people coming to you and ask you some questions. What is the most popular question they ask you?
I think the question that people are asking me of late are more or less, they are of different forms and shapes, but if I'm to sum it up, how do they stay relevant in this changing era? So with the rise of automation, I mean, automation has been there since ever, but the way adoption of automation is increasing, and there is this move for everybody expected to test. I believe some testers feel threatened about their existence, and they are looking for a way out how to stay relevant. So they are basically seeking a guidance for the skills that are needed to survive and still make a career progression in their current situation.
Mm-hmm. The most popular question I get, I hate it. Don't ask people this. Is, hey Angie, basically, what should I do with my life?
Holy cow!
I know. It's such a hard question, and I don't even know these people, so I don't know how to answer that. So don't ask people that, especially strangers. The next popular question I get that I actually answer is probably like, how do I learn more about automation? And that's from testers who want to get in automation, and also from developers who want to do more testing and help with more testing. So that's really great to hear that from both sides of those people. So there's lots of resources available, physical, online. So yeah, I just point people to those types of things.
So I have a frequently asked question. I'm not sure if this is really wisdom for everybody in this room, but probably the one I get asked the most is like, Jason, are you working right now? And I think I've gone over the long journey of my life getting comfortable emphatically saying yes when staring at the wall. Looks like I'm not working, right? Or playing with a box of Legos. Looks like I'm not working. Or playing with Legos and some 3D printer. It looks like I'm not working. Stealing slightly a punchline from my talk later, but there's a certain level of being comfortable. There's various phrases, and lots of people never talked about it, but like serious play. I'm a big fan of, if you can get out of a very stressful environment and of a boring environment and get into a creative, playful environment, it's very easy to learn things in that environment. And I think I've kind of learned lots of different ways that if someone's kind of not having a great day or kind of not enjoying their environments, they're just going to hate on you because they're a little bit jealous, but they're not going to be consciously jealous. They're just going to hate on you because it looks like you're just playing. And it's true, you are playing, but I would argue that like I've had various different ways of explaining this. Sometimes the way I'd explain it at previous companies, it's like, well, okay, so-and-so is working on how we get paid next week. This other person, the CEO, is figuring out how we get paid next 6 months. I'm trying to figure out how we get paid in 5 years, right? That's the way I kind of look at it. I don't even remember what the question was, but the frequently asked question, right? But it's so I've gotten okay with like, no, I'm playing with something, but like intentionally. And if anything else, I would hope that you find the courage to maybe deal with that hazing or flack that you might get. Because I'm going to be encouraging people to go buy a box of Lego because testing is getting weird and you might need a box of Lego to figure out some stuff. And you're going to have to be okay with your boss coming up to you saying, why do you have a box of Lego? It's like, well, I'm actually trying to figure out payment systems, like whatever. But you're going to have that conversation and don't be afraid of it.
The question I get asked most is, why do you have donkeys? But the other one I get asked that's work-related is, what do you see as the trends in the future of testing? And I don't know because I can't really tell the future, but it's fun to talk about it.
All right. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to turn to you to ask you questions. I'm going to have two volunteers going around and raise your hand so we can give you a mic. Priyanka.
I want to ask to everybody, stand up. I want to ask to everyone in this expert panel, what makes them not sleep at night, if there is any? What one thing that keeps you awake?
What keeps you awake at night?
I still don't understand the question.
What keeps you up at
What
night?
what makes you worried?
Oh, okay.
If nothing worries you, then hey. Then that's the question.
It worries me that I hear so poorly, but there's not much else I can do about that.
Well, different nights I feel worried for different things, but I would prefer to answer this in work context. So, for me, what is my biggest concern so far, where I don't see a solution yet, is, and I personally feel struggling and affected, and I have been observing things over my 10 years of testing career so far, is that in middle management and in leadership positions, there is a sheer lack of testing understanding and knowledge for quality. And with the current change or latest change of testers reporting more into agile teams to engineering leads or leadership with engineering positions who do not really have meaningful experience of testing, I believe it is a big compromise that is happening on testers' career, their progression, the motivation, and this thing, how do I solve this, or how can I do things, what can I do to change this, is something that keeps me awake once in a while.
There's a lot of people, everyone up here, including Anna, who's doing a lot to move the community forward, move the industry forward. And not you all, because you all are here today, but the vast majority of our peers are not consuming this and not acting upon it. And that really bothers me. And I don't know how to solve it. I like to solve problems, and this is one I don't know how to solve. Like, we can make the information available, right? You can even give it away for free. Webinars, things like this. And people don't take it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really sure why. I know we're all busy. We heard the talk earlier today. But I don't know. That keeps me up. That bothers me.
I'm perhaps privileged that this doesn't happen every night in my life, but there's a bit of a roller coaster that I can look back and know that there have been times where it's been sleepless nights. Usually those are kind of like transitions when, like, should I keep doing this thing that I'm doing, or should I move on? Either a new company or new job or new project or whatever. I mean, it's a way longer conversation, but I can't resolve it here. But if anything else, like, sometimes our jobs are really hard. My only little trick there to get to sleepless nights to sleep full nights is don't quit your job tomorrow, but check in with yourself, maybe track your sleeping habits for 6 months, right? And if the majority of those nights were sleepless nights, you definitely need to make a change. But if it was just a week, maybe you just had a bad week. So there's a certain level of like, literally, if you're in a bad place and you have sleepless nights, like literally start keeping kind of a journal and tracking it, and be totally okay making a major life change if majority of your nights over a 6-month period were sleepless. Because that's actually worked. I've quit perfectly well-paying great jobs because they were keeping me up at night. And again, had the privilege to be able to do that. So massive caveat there, right? Not everyone has the access or ability to do that, and I recognize that. But if you can get to a situation where, everyone deserves good sleep. So don't quit your job tomorrow, but maybe 6 months from now, it might be a good idea.
I'm just a born worrier. I worry about everything, and so I really don't sleep very well. But even if there was nothing serious, I would worry. But one thing that worries me is something that kind of came to my mind yesterday during the awesome capabilities building your capacity workshop yesterday that those 3 amazing people did, is that most people don't like their job, and most people don't feel appreciated at their job. And I suffer from that too. We all like to be appreciated and feel like we've contributed something. And I think I have a guess that most people don't feel psychologically safe at their job, which we all know is the number 1 prerequisite for team and company success. I think a lot of people don't feel included. I think a lot of managers are not trying to make people feel included and establish a culture of inclusion and safety. And I know there's more awareness and more talk about that, but it worries me that it's a problem that's not getting solved quickly enough.
Next. Oops. Let's go with Patrick, and then Didja. Oh, and Boro. Okay.
Hi. So there was a lot of trends of tearing down walls, speaking the same language, speeding up. We all know that like QA is very adaptive and sort of figuring things out and testing on the fly type of culture. So I'm curious from 4 different perspectives if you have different pieces of advice on how to adapt quickly, or if you've come up with small little life hacks that sort of help you stay on the forefront as opposed to getting lost in the muck of all this information constantly. That's you.
Very interesting question. I think what personally helps me to stay ahead of game if I am, this advice I got and I learned from Jerry Weinberg when I interviewed him. He said, your professional career as a tester is dead the moment you stop learning new things. And I believe this curiosity, this passion to learn new things keeps me motivated and ahead of time. It gives me enough information about what I'm expected to do in future and how I'm supposed to drive. It's like a compass. It's a tool that you need to be able to figure out your further direction. And compass wouldn't automatically move unless you make a movement. And this movement is about your curiosity and passion to learn. Continuous learning is something I would say helps me personally.
That's my answer as well. I do, my hacks are to stay ahead of what's going on in whatever current environment I'm working on. So you heard in the keynote, I was like totally oblivious to machine learning. I never wanted to feel that again. And so I started reading, I read blogs every single day. I see our blogs out there. I listen to webinars. I take online courses. I play with frameworks that I don't have to use this for my job, but I want to learn it because this is what everybody's talking about, right? Or, oh, it looks like this language is becoming more popular. I don't know how to write in that language. Is there a course available? I'm going to take it. And so it moves from me becoming adaptive to me leading the change in my organization. I don't wait for people to tell me what we're going to do. Like that happens sometimes, but okay. I've learned how to learn, and I'm not afraid to make those changes. But a lot of times, I'm also bringing in the new ideas like, hey, listen, this is a new technique that's being used in the field. It seems like it's very applicable to this problem we have. Maybe we should try it out. And so you go from just the person that's just doing what's told to the leader.
That was excellent. I would say, like, so we all know how to Google, we all know how to watch YouTube. I call it, actually when trying to find out some technical skill, like, call it YouTube courage. Like, I have to build up the courage. I watch someone do something 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, oh, I can do that, right? There's a certain level of like, okay, since we all can keep researching, there's a certain level of like knowing when to stop, right? That's the hack, right? How much is too much? I would say like your goal is to be kind of cocktail party dangerous. And there's maybe 2 things. And actually, I think Angie kind of hit on this morning. One is anytime someone mentions some new technology and it's all perfect and amazing, zero in and try to find, and you keep reading things or watching YouTube videos until you can find 3 things that suck about that thing. Because then you at some point you can blow past all the hype and you are actually hitting some real stuff there where someone is honest and knowledgeable about what's horrible about a particular thing. So Angie kind of pointed that out, like, hey, some of this stuff is, all of our techniques for testing this stuff don't necessarily apply. Not all, sorry. There are new things that you have to learn. It's testable, it's kind of hard to test, you have to figure things out, but the testability aspect of machine learning, that's a hard thing. It's not a solved problem. That's a thing that someone who's just hyping this stuff all day long is just never going to get to. The other thing I would say is, in any particular new topic, zero in on the controversies. Everything has some, eventually breaks into factions over and that's potentially a hint for what is kind of the cutting edge of that field. So there's a huge field. So, so I'm cocktail party dangerous with radio frequencies, right? Apparently, this is not going to be a rant, but I've stumbled into finding out that one of the controversies in amateur radio is encryption and digital modes. And these people are dug in for decades, and this is a thing. So if I was going to be cocktail party dangerous, talking about radio frequencies, I would just lob the word encryption out there and see what happens. And then you'll learn from that conversation. So there's a certain level of if you can start learning roughly the space of the field, find out what the controversies are, and get to 3 things that kind of suck about it, then at that point, you're obviously going to hear all the hype. That's just all-encompassing in the marketing everywhere. That's easy. Getting to the difficult truths about a particular thing, you can kind of stop roughly at 3 things, right? And then from there, you can kind of wait and then see how much more you need to know after that.
I feel like I'm the worst person to ask this question because
I thought you were the best person.
I don't know, because I really suck at achieving any of my learning goals. I do read a lot and try to listen to podcasts and things like that, but I don't ever have enough time. And it's I have a Dojo Pro membership on administrative testing that every talk from every test batch is on there. All these master classes are on there. All these Ask Me Anythings and webinars. Do I ever have time to watch them? No. Test Automation University, I promised myself I would take Angie's Java course in October, and I did the first 2 lessons, and it was so much fun, and then somehow I didn't have time for it. After all, I know that's part of what Andrew was talking about in his talk. I'm failing at that, but that said, I think one effective way for me to perhaps overcome that is to pair up with somebody to learn. Lisa Hawk and Toyo Mamuji did an awesome keynote at Agile Testing Days a couple weeks ago about how they made a pact. Well, they made a learning pact a few years ago at Agile Testing Days, and the first thing they agreed to is that they would each do their first conference talk that following year, and they achieved that, and they achieved a lot more. And so every year they set learning goals for themselves and career goals for themselves, and supported each other even if it wasn't the same goal. And now they have a whole learning group. They got 10 people that are all supporting each other, and I want. Besides finishing Angie's course, Abby Bangser and Benny Hoffman did a great tutorial at Agile Testing Days on observability, and they've made their sample application and their tool stack available on GitHub. So I really want to get an AWS account and install those things and play around with them and learn them. And I'm pairing up with Ashley Hunsberger because she wants to learn them too. So maybe both of us holding each other accountable will actually do it. So stay tuned, see if that works.
Lisa, so you've written a book on XP, on Agile, and now you've done a lot in DevOps. How did you adapt to all of these different process changes?
Like of all the people, Lisa telling us that.
Right. That's
of
what I'm
all
like.
the
Are you
people.
kidding me?
The truth is, I was doing Agile and DevOps before we had those words, and especially DevOps. I mean, I was baking brownies for the people in the machine room and the operations back in the 80s when we had a mainframe computer, because I needed those people to help me. They had to mount my tapes. They had to run my jobs. And I've always collaborated closely with those people, and I've been really lucky to be on cross-functional teams where we all work together on testing, and we all work together on releases, and we all work together on the pipeline. So I didn't have a name for it until I read Jess Humble and David Farley's Continuous Delivery book back in 2009. I was like, oh, hey, this has a name. So I realized I'd been doing a lot of that stuff. I didn't have the words for it. But also another way to learn is to do a presentation about it at a conference. And so I started pairing in 2018, Abby Bangser and I paired on doing a pipeline workshop at European Testing Days. And so I learned so much from Angie. So I was like, this is really smart. I'm just going to pair with people who know more than I do. And that's the way I learn a lot of things. I've learned a lot of things in the past few years by pairing with people who know it and presenting about it.
Okay, yes, Burke. Speak into it. Speak into it. All right. Here we go. Okay.
I know testing is not new, and testing is a part of life in every way, and software testing is also not new, but considering software products, software solutions have been popular quite these last few years, especially the last decade. Software testing is also quite popular these days, and demand for software testers is also growing. That means there are more software QA testers being searched for jobs, and sometimes it makes me think that the quality of quality testers is not being tested, not excluding me. And that makes me worry about the products I use because these products are being tested by some QA testers. And because of this growing demand on QA testers and not the quality of QA testers not being measured, I sometimes think that those products might not be tested properly, or they just might be released without further inspection. What do you think about this kind of? What's your take on this situation? And what do you think should be do? How do we approach these kind of testers? Again, not excluding me.
Yikes.
I believe, if I understand your question correctly, Angie partly answered her worry, which is basically, I believe, is also a root cause. I personally believe the way to overcome this is being a role model for people. So people usually, this is what I have learned by coaching testing to others over a decade. People don't like to be told what to do, but if you show them through your own example of how to excel, how to do things, they most likely follow you. So be the change you want to see and keep at it. I'm sure slowly but surely you will make an impact.
This is not limited to testers, right? There's high demand for developers as well. And after people have just hired like any Joe Blow off the street and realized like, oh crap, they can't really code for real. Now we start seeing like, we have to be careful because now we see these horrible like interviews, right, for developers, and now that's even spilling over to testers as well. So as an SDET, I have to do the exact same interviews that developers do with the whiteboards and the coding challenges, plus know the testing questions as well. So our interviews are becoming harder than the developer interviews, right? So that's the way that people are testing to make sure you actually know your stuff. I hate it. I think it's awful. I don't know how I think there's much better ways to measure that in interviews, just having an open discussion instead of like hazing people.
I would just like to add a small part here. So I had some ideas and I basically wrote a blog on this, evaluating and empowering testers in Agile team. I believe part of this problem is also because since there are people without substantial testing experience responsible for hiring testers, the focus is pretty much more on evaluating them, interviewing them mostly on automation skills, but that is just part of the whole stuff that matters. So I believe part of the problem or the solution of partly the solution would be also to educate people who are responsible for testers growth, hiring, who are from non-testing background, to educate them for testing and the quality.
Yeah, I would just actually push back on the question a little bit. I apologize, I wasn't checking my email. I was trying to find the quote. I couldn't find it. I think it's from Deming, and he said something along the lines of when you're testing quality, you're not putting the quality in it. The tester is not responsible for the quality of the thing. The quality is already there. You're trying to get information about it out, but a good or bad tester, it's completely separate than the quality of the product itself, right? So I would say the problem, if you're looking for an intersection between the quality of the testers and the quality of the product, the problem, it always goes back to management, right? And it goes back to the product itself. And I would say that those two things are symptoms of the same problem, that everyone's not caring enough, right? If you had a really good product and were concerned about quality, you'd be caring about the quality of the skill set of everybody, and you'd be caring about the product itself. But yeah, this is a common thing that happens, is where something bad gets out, and the first question is like, why did you let that get out? You're the quality person, why didn't you stop it? Like, that's absolutely the wrong question to ask, right? It's like, why did we as an organization let this out? And it's usually the person who's asking the question is probably ultimately the one responsible, and they're just trying to deflect it and find someone else to blame, right? So I would gently, however, so slightly push back and say, the quality is already there, don't shoot the messenger, right?
I think this goes back to what I was saying about educating management. We have to somehow educate people at the executive level what quality really is, why it matters to them, what it means to their bottom line, make them care about it, and then still solve the other problems. You get the behaviors you reward. So people say, oh, the developers don't do enough testing. Well, on my last team, the development director made exploratory testing skills part of the skill levels that developers had to achieve to rise up through the ranks and get raises and stuff. So they had to have a certain competency at exploratory testing at each level. Well, guess what? Then they were really keen to come to my exploratory testing workshops and pair with me to do exploratory testing and learn how to use personas and write charters. We had a book club and read Elizabeth Henderson's book together. You get what you motivate. You get what you reward. If you're pushing developers just to meet a deadline and just get that feature out, yeah, that's what you're going to get. A bunch of crap.
Thank you. So, Dechen. Yeah, it should be the last question, but the panelists are available throughout the day today, so you can talk to them. Go ahead.
Okay, the last question.
Yeah, pressure on you.
Yeah. It's simple.
You make it nice. Make it interesting for everyone.
Okay. What was the biggest challenge or obstacle that you all have in your careers, and how did you solve it, overcome it?
Let me start with you.
Wow, okay. Put me on the spot here.
Can you repeat the question for me?
What's the biggest obstacle in our career, and challenge, and how do we overcome it? I think Wizard of Oz made an appearance earlier. I'm just going to sound like the line, courage. For me, I didn't have the courage of my convictions. This is my second startup. The first time I started it, I kind of knew I had an idea, but I didn't have the courage to lead the charge, right? So, but this time around, I have the courage to be like the sole founder and be responsible for payroll. It's all my fault, right? I didn't have that courage. There's a certain level of I've heard this thing about invention where it doesn't often come from a eureka moment. It often comes from a, that's funny moment, right? And there's a certain level of right in those moments, and you share that, don't you think this is funny too? I've heard this other phrase. It's like it's a baby idea. It's a small little fledgling thing, and it can die very easily. And if you don't have the courage, granted, maybe in some places there's too much courage, but for me personally, it was taking after those that's funny moments, and then kind of being sure that like, hey, I think really there's something here. And then especially when everyone else is like, no, like move on. We've got bigger, important things to do. Like just have the courage to kind of be a little bit stubborn and see your idea through. Granted, this is kind of super vague without getting into details, but for me, it was this journey of just having more confidence in the things that I kind of was slowly realizing were true, either true, capital T true, or true for me. And finally getting to a place where either I allowed myself to make my life into what I wanted it to be, where I can play with robots all day long or whatever. But it took me way too many years to get to that point. So sometimes I'm envious of kids coming right out of college who are just like, they're king of the world, right? It's like, man, I wish I was that confident. It took me a long time to finally get to a place where I could act on the things that I think I wanted to do.
I guess I would say, I had an idea that went out of my head, but I think my biggest career challenge maybe is right now. I'm 64 years old, and I feel like I don't learn things as fast as I used to, and I feel like there's 80,000 times more things to learn, and I'm really bad about comparing myself to others. So I look at people like Angie and say, oh my God, look, she learned that, she learned that. She did this awesome thing, and but she's not me, I'm not her. It's unfortunate that we do supposedly the same job, because my teammates say, well, look at what Angie did, can't you do that? It's really hard. But I do worry. It's like, I'm going to get behind the times. If I'm not always 100 times better than everybody else at my age, I'm not going to be employable. I was always secure about jobs because I knew I could get another job. I don't have that confidence today. I know that sounds weird, but that's how I feel. And I'm working on it.
My biggest challenging situations, I think so far I have stumbled upon it once in a while, and every other time I kind of dealt with it in a different way. But what I personally feel very challenging is having to work with under people who don't understand testing, who do not value testing, and as a tester who takes pride in his work, who has contributed to the craft, it becomes frustrating to work in such environment. How do I go about it? I try to change things. I try to influence things. When it works, it works. But sometimes you just hit the brick wall, whatever. And in that case, I make a move and I work with people who understand things. And I think, that's what I would say. If you stumble upon, go for it.
Believe it or not, I used to be really shy. I would not speak up in meetings or at work. I would just like, oh, okay, what's my task? And like, just go do my task, right? And I had a wake-up call when I got a bad evaluation. Now, all of my work was done, but they said that, oh, you don't show initiative, you're not engaged with the team. And a lot of that stemmed from a couple of different things, right? I didn't have the confidence. I felt like, okay, nobody looks like me. I'm the only woman in the room. I'm the only black person in the room. I'm a tester. Like all of these things was just like messing with me. And that wake-up call was great because I then said, okay, the ideas that I have, they sound ridiculous. But I have to say something or I'm going to get a bad review again. So I would just share my ridiculous ideas. And people would go, wow, that's really innovative, right? And so I look at people like Jason is like opposite of me, right? So Jason is white, middle-aged guy. And Jason sat here and said the same thing about confidence. So this was in my mind. This wasn't a real thing, you know? I didn't have to feel that way. When I started speaking up, my career took off those weird, crazy ideas, my company said, let's patent them. I now have 26 patents issued in US and China from these goofy ideas that I was too afraid to share, right? My career has taken off, the opportunities that I have. Not only do testers want to listen to me, as Anna said, developers are inviting me to their conferences. Please come keynote our conference. Me, the tester? Yes, you, the tester, right? So that was my biggest challenge, is getting over myself and my self-doubt and believing that people thought less of me because of who I am, what I do, and what I look like, and utilizing those differences as my superpower.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear members of the panel. Thank you very much, everybody in this room, for participating and being part of something great that we are building here together right now. The members of the panel will be available. Talk to them. This is your chance. I kind of putting stress on you, but this is the chance for everybody else here to kind of communicate, talk to you, and get inspired. Definitely get inspired by these wonderful people. Thank you very much.